All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to All Things Fulfilled, and we will be underway here just shortly. Just double checking a couple of things so that we can get started. And I think everything is okay for now. Good morning, Deb. How are you doing? And welcome to the study this morning. All right. I'm just getting back off of a little vacation, so um, it will probably take me a little while to get back into the groove of things. But let's go ahead and start this morning. Okay, so once again, in response to last week's lesson, there were several views on the sea beast. And for some, it was an emphatic description of Rome. And, I can't say that I totally disagree with that. I'm still trying to figure some things out because it hasn't all come clear to me just yet. So I, don't have a problem with people saying that the sea beast is Rome, and with that understanding, there are just several things that I'm turning around in my head, trying to come to a conclusion that satisfies me, and I haven't done that yet. So I want to be perfectly upfront with you about that. Um, this is still, a study of investigation for me. Um, there are no, there's no doubt that the events of Revelation occurred during the time of the Romans in the first century. So I would never question that. We have the treading down of the city by the Gentiles in Revelation chapter 11 and verse 2. The holy city would be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles were fulfilled. So that's definitely the Romans from my point of view, and I believe is what the Bible is teaching us. And again, we have the text in Revelation 17 and verse 10 that says that there are 7 kings, and 5 of whom had fallen. One is, and the 7th had not yet come. And of course, when I look at the kings, of course, you have the Caesars, and I start them from the count with Julius. But even if you started with Augustus, you still cannot get to Vespasian or Titus at the time that the book was written, because you still have those 3 kings in between, Galba, Otho, and Vitellius. And so either one of them is going to be the 6th or one of them is going to be the 7th. But I just tend to start from Julius, and that will take you down to Nero, who was the 6th king. The 7th had not yet come, which would be Galba, and therefore we would have the book still written in the time before Domitian. That's way before the time of AD 96. So you'd still be looking at a pre-70, pre-destruction of Jerusalem time frame. Now, we also noted that the beast of Revelation was a composite of all the previous kingdoms. That is, the Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, and the Grecian, including that which appeared to be Rome, if we take the 10-horned beast as Rome from Daniel chapter 7. The point that I made on the previous week was that we had these other beasts that were incorporated into the beast in Revelation 13 that makes it appear to be a little larger than the beast in Daniel 7 for Rome, because you had those 3 beasts that fell prior to the coming of the 10-horned beast, and then the little horn that comes up among them. And so if that's the case, it doesn't appear to be Rome. Now, the other reason was that I gave is that you had all of these different personas of Gentile or pagan kingdoms and entities from the Old Covenant being illustrated in the book of Revelation. In other words, if you talk about Sodom and Egypt and Mystery Babylon, etc., so they begin to take on those particular characteristics. The other thing about Rome, Rome did not, from my perspective, begin a war against the church that continued until the coming of Christ, which would have been, of course, 70 AD, for those of us who understand from the preterist view. And it seemed that Rome was not at war with the church, but actually came to the defense of the church time and time again. It was Rome, even at the crucifixion of Christ, where Pilate said, "I find no fault in this man." And so he turned him over to the Jews. Now, you could say that in a sense, he reneged his responsibility. And because of that, that was, since he didn't advocate for him, that was an advocate, that was his opposition to him. So I can go with that. But it was also Rome to whom Paul appealed when he was fighting against the Jews. The Jews were trying to kill him. Paul appealed to Caesar, and of course, he was delivered from them on one occasion. And you have even some in Caesar's household who were obeying the gospel. But Rome clearly fights against the Jews for 3.5 years until Jerusalem is trodden down, as we indicated before. And that's Luke chapter 21 and verse 24. Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And also during that same time that Rome is fighting against Jerusalem, which in my opinion seems to be helping the Christians. But during that same time, the beast is at war against the church. Revelation 13:5, and continues that war until the coming of Christ. So you have two things going on from that perspective. You've got Rome that is warring against Jerusalem, and then you've got the beast that's fighting against the church, all at the same time. And that, to me, I just find to be one of the issues that I have with making this beast Rome. I'm very clear about the lion, the bear, and the leopard, but that wasn't Rome in Daniel 7, and that's a point that I keep wanting to keep in mind. So from that perspective, it just doesn't make sense to have Rome fighting the Jews and the church, consecutively or concurrently is the word I'm looking for. Now, you do have Paul making a statement, and I know you could take this as from an individual point of view, but Paul made the statement, if after the manner of men, I have fought with beasts at Ephesus. So you could say that that's just Paul speaking about his own personal experience, or you could say that this is Paul representing the church. In other words, speaking more from a representative point of view, because it wasn't just Paul who fought with beasts at Ephesus. When you look in Ephesians chapter 6, you find that it's the entire church that's engaged in the war. And so Paul may just be speaking representatively and therefore saying that this is this war that's taking place. And I think there's definitely the correlation with that, which I'll mention here just momentarily. So those whom he styled as the beasts in 1 Corinthians 15 were Judaizers who hunted and stalked him like prey in the jungle. And he had many encounters with them, as we can read through the book of Acts. And so, as we said, the church was engaged in war at the time of the writing of Revelation, and that's Ephesians 6 and verse 12, when the text spoke about fighting against the wiles of the devil. Well, if that's the case, that's what you have in Revelation 12 and verse 7, but also it says that they were at war against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against the spiritual host of wickedness in the heavenlies. So that seems to correspond with the war that's taking place in Revelation 12 and verse 7, the war against the rulers of the darkness, the principalities and the powers, spiritual host of wickedness in the heavenlies. And so they're fighting this war at this time, and that was going on for some time, but I can't see where it ended, any time prior to the time of the end, because of what's stated in Revelation chapter 12, that takes you all the way to the time where the victory is given to the saints. And that would, of course, be the time of the end of the war, which would place us again at 70 AD. The other thing is the correlation of that with Daniel. Good morning to you, Martin, and to the rest of you that I haven't spoken to, and we'll try to get, say hello to you later. We just kind of, got started before some of you came in. But the end of the war against the church results in the beast being destroyed in the burning flame, if you go back and look at Daniel. And I know I touched on this a little bit on last week, but I want to touch it again because I think it's important in looking at this. So that clearly correlates the events. Well, first of all, let's talk about that court scene. So in Daniel 7 and verse 10, this is where the books are open. And of course, the court is seated. But that correlates with the events of Revelation chapter 20 and verse 12, where the books were open. Daniel also saw the horn, and that would be the little horn, yet speaking pompous words. So, looking at Daniel chapter 7, you find that this little horn comes up, and I'm going to go over there and just kind of read that so you can see. After he says in the latter part of verse 10 that the court was seated and the books were open, I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. So here you have, the horn speaking, you have the body of the beast slain and its body given to the burning flame. Well, that correlates with Revelation chapter 19 and verse 20, also Revelation 20 and verse 10. So it also appears to correlate with Daniel 12 and verse 7, where it says that the power of the holy people would be completely shattered, so completely destroyed, so that, that becomes the end of them. And when that occurs, the text also says that's when all things would be fulfilled. And as you know, that was for a time, times, and half time, and until the power of the holy people was completely shattered. So that, again, sort of correlates with that 3.5 years that we see indicated so many times in Daniel chapter 12 and also in Daniel 13, but it's also indicated in chapter 11 as well. Now, it's the little horn that spoke these pompous words that made war against the saints, Daniel 7, verses 19 and 20. And in that text, it's called the other horn. Now, Deb says the earthly Jerusalem is the beast. It's I'm definitely looking in that direction because it seems to make sense to view it from that perspective. But back to this horn, it is called the other horn. And this is what I want to say to those who want to do all of this addition and subtraction with the 10 horns. I just do not see that you take the 10 horn beast and you add either one horn to it and make it 11 horns, or you take 3 horns from it and make it 7 horns, or you make it 8 horns, depending on when you add it. If you add it, if you subtract from the 10 or if you subtract from 11 after you've added the 1. When you look at the text in Daniel, and, in all 3 cases, it seems to make the little horn separate. So let's read a couple of passages here. In verse 19, it says, "Then I wish to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the others." Now, the others would be the first 3. And then it says the 4th beast was different from all the others. So now it's comparing this 4th beast with the previous 3, the lion, the bear, and the leopard that was mentioned in earlier in chapter 7. Exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its nails of bronze, which devoured and broke in pieces and trampled the residue with its feet. And the 10 horns that were on its head. So there again, that's the 4th beast with the 10 horns on its head. Now watch. And the other horn, which came up, before which 3 fell. So now it's telling you that 3 had fallen in the presence of this other horn, which previously it's called the little horn. And he says that horn, which had eyes and a mouth, which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. So you can see, at least I can, I don't know if anybody else can, but I can see how that is totally separate and distinct from the 10 horns. And the reason it's called the other horn, and even mentions the 3 horns that failed before. Now watch verse 21. I was watching, and the same horn was making war. So what same horn? That horn that spoke pompous words, that appeared stouter than its fellows, so to speak. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them until the Ancient of Days came. So this horn persecutes, this horn goes to war against the saints until the Ancient of Days came. It doesn't say that the 10-horned beast at this time goes to war. So if you're making that Rome, that's kind of part of the problem that I see. But nevertheless, we do find in this composite nature of the beast in Revelation 13 that the war does begin with them. So that's where the difficulty comes in, and that's what I'm still trying to sort out. And I don't think I'm going to get it sorted out in the next couple of weeks, to be honest with you. But anyway, he says, until the Ancient of Days came, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Now, when we look also in verses 23 through 25, when he begins to give more of an interpretation, you have the same thing happening again. It says, thus he said, the 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall arise after them. So the 10 horns arise from that kingdom, and then it says another shall arise after them, and he shall be different from the first ones. So this comparison between them continues, and shall subdue 3 kings. Doesn't say how he subdues them, but it says that he shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words. So the activity is still the same. He still speaks the pompous words against the Most High. So the attention of the little horn, of this other horn, is always focused against the Most High and against the saints. However, you see the 4th beast is that which devours the whole earth, and so seems like the direction of his activity is a little bit different from that perspective. But anyway, it says, he shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. The saints shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. So there we are, back to our 3.5 years. But the court shall be seated. And this is where the summary is, or the sum up of the activity is. It comes back down to this great white throne judgment. The court shall be seated. They shall take away his dominion. And notice now, they take away the dominion of this little horn, of this horn that is focused on the saints of the Most High, that persecutes the saints of the Most High, that speaks pompous words against the Most High. His dominion is taken away to consume and destroy it forever. But notice it says, after this, the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. So that's just what I see in that particular connection. I don't think that I could get more specific about it at this particular point. And so we'll continue to move forward on this. Now, something else is said. Of course, we get into the what we call the land beast in Revelation chapter 13 as well. And in speaking about the land beast, it says a few things concerning him. Verse 8 says, all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword, and he who is here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Now, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. So he's coming out of the land, which seems to be, again, originating, in this case, from the land. So I would take that generally to be a reference to Palestine when it says that it's coming up out of the earth. And then it says, and he had two horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. Okay, there are several things that I'm considering here. You know, you've got Herod, that could be considered. There are some who view this as possibly the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Others view it as false teachers among Israel. You could look at it from the perspective of the priesthood, and maybe with Caiaphas and Annas, and view it from that perspective as well. I'm not going to draw a conclusion just yet because, like I said, I'm still studying it. But one thing that is clearly stated here, it says, and he exercises all the authority and of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and who lived. That's about the third time I think that reference to the beast that was wounded by the sword is made in the chapter. But he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many who would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Now, where in Scripture do we find anything such as that? Now, Eric says, I'm with you, but how was the little horn, if it is Jerusalem, trying to change the times and the law? I think this part may better fit Nero. Well, my opinion on that, Eric, and thanks for raising that question, is that I think, first of all, that it would have been the Jews who would have been more likely to try to change times and law in this sense. The new covenant, or the law, was teaching that the new covenant was to come in. So to teach the law would have been to teach that the old law is passing, the new covenant is coming in. Who would have been more interested in resisting that? Just like in Acts chapter 6, when they spoke concerning Stephen, saying, we have heard this man speak blasphemous words against this people and the law, saying that God would change the customs that he delivered to Moses. So in their resistance, they're trying to change the law of God that's coming in. And I think that, to me, that fits. I understand what you're saying, but I think that fits more from the perspective that the purpose of the law was to lead them to Christ. And if they refused to be led to Christ and wanted to persist in maintaining the law that they had, that was, in my judgment, an attempt of changing, or their attempt to change, the times and the law, and to insist that the law would just continue. The beast could be the emperor or one of them. Sometimes the dragon is the emperor, and other times it is the Roman Empire in its entirety. Like I said, those are some good points. I can't totally say that I disagree with them. I'm just not fully in agreement with them because of a lot of this language. Now, here's another reason why I believe that there is a lot leaning toward Israel as it relates to this beast. Now, when he says that in verse 13, he's telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived, and he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast. And of course, if I hadn't mentioned it, even the zealots come in at some point in time, and with what they were doing. So I can't rule out any of that, but it's so many pieces here to try to sort out that I just don't want to go too quickly and draw a conclusion without looking at a lot of this. Now, but from that perspective, the idea of this takes me back to Daniel again. Now, remember, it's Daniel who gives us all this information about beasts. And, from Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 12, from that perspective. So Daniel is the one who focuses a lot on the beast. Well, I think Daniel also focuses on making an image to the beast as well. But let's take a look at it. In the 3rd chapter of Daniel, it says, Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and its width 6 cubits. Now, I don't know whether it's, how to define that, but this is just a thought I'm going to throw out. And it's not the conclusion that I'm going to reach, which I'm probably going to have to cover most of this on next week, but I just want to throw some thoughts out there for you. All right, if you got the height of this image as 60 cubits, and then you have its width as 6 cubits, but I don't think it's a 2-dimensional image. I think it is a 3-dimensional image. And if it's a 3-dimensional image, then when you talk about the width, you would have 2 sides with the width. And so you would have 60 cubits, and you would have 6 cubits and another 6 cubits. Now, I don't think that's where you get the 666 from. There are others who even look at the Temple of Solomon, and they see with the, I think, 666 talents, I think it was used for the Temple of Solomon. Some use it from that perspective to talk about the image, and others go back and look at the temple and the measurements of the temple to draw that conclusion. But I'm going to talk about something else that I think relates more to this. Now, Elvin says that it said he will think to change times and laws. Is that in correlation to Luke 21 and verse 8? Let me take a look at Luke 21:8 very quickly, Elvin, and see. And he said, take heed that you not be deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he. The time has drawn near, therefore do not go after them. Well, that could be, they're saying that the time is near. So that could, I could see that as well, being a part of that, trying to change the times as well. So either by a premature changing of time or by a delayed change of time. And even with the concept of Hymenaeus and Philetus saying that the resurrection was past already, could be the same thing. And of course, they were Judaizers as well. But I want to continue down this path of just looking at Nebuchadnezzar and the language that's used so you can see a similarity. And I know everybody knows the story, but I want to make sure I get it in the recording here. So it says that Nebuchadnezzar set up this image in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, magistrates, and all the officials of the province to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So they all come and gather together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And so then verse 4, a herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, the psaltery, and the symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Someone is giving us some dimensions of that. I don't know how that works. But nevertheless, he says, and whoever does not fall down and worship shall be immediately or cast immediately into the burning fiery furnace. So what you see here is we're in Babylon. We're talking about an image that was set up by Nebuchadnezzar, where he required all who were in the land to fall down and worship it. And of course, everyone did, and I would say everyone did whose names were not written in the book of life, because we know that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not bow down to worship this image. But I find it rather interesting, since in the book of Revelation, Jerusalem is called Mystery Babylon. Daniel is dealing with beasts that are associated with Babylon and the time that he's in Babylon writing all of this. And then you have, again, in Babylon, this setting up of this beast that everyone was supposed to worship. Now, that seems to be somewhat of a background for that. Now, we're running out of time. We are out of time. But on next week, when we come back, I'm going to talk about 666 and how that was used in Babylon for various gods in Babylon, and how the number of those gods added up to the number 666. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that, but that's what I will be talking about on next week when we count the number of the beast and we look at it from that perspective. But I did want to lay a little bit of a foundation in taking us back to Babylon, where they had this image, and the language seems to follow the same language of one setting up an image and requiring everyone to worship it. Now, I know there's some different things said here, because it talks about the mark in the foreheads as well, and we will look at that, but we'll talk about it from that perspective. So with that, I hope that you got something out of the lesson this morning, and be sure and share the message with others. Be sure and also encourage people to subscribe. We're getting some good responses from people who are subscribing to the newsletter. They're asking questions. They're also, offering insights and comments as well, and they express their appreciation about learning. So I'm really grateful for that, and thank you for sharing the information. So let me take these last few minutes, say good morning to everybody who's here. So I'm going to go down the line and see if I can get everybody in before I leave. All right. So I've said good morning to Deb, but once again, good morning to you. Good morning to Steve, to Stephen, to Carol, to Gail, to Rosette, to Alan, Beatrice, Martin, and Daniel, Robin, Elvin, Eric, Jose, Julie, Dale, and let's see, Alexander, and I think that's about it. All right. Well, good morning to all of you. Any of you who join afterwards, good morning to you as well. And we will look forward to being back on next week. And I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are going to be on what I do present. Maybe you've heard it before, maybe you've not, but until I discovered it during the study of Revelation, I had not heard this. And it's not Nero, and it's not, who was the other one? Anyway, it's not Nero, and it's not anybody contemporary, which I know that most of you already know, but it is something that is definitely contextually related, I think, and I think it makes a lot of sense to me from the perspective in the way that the book of Revelation is put together on this point. And if not, then we'll just have to keep studying, but let's see what we come up with on next week. Thank you, and I'll see you on next Sunday, Lord willing.